Many scholars believe that Alexander wanted to appropriate the art of immortality passed down through generations by the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and to realize the concept of immortality. The resurrection magic of ancient Egyptians. In 334 BC, King Alexander the Great of Macedonia launched a campaign to invade Asia and Africa. His attack route has been studied, and it was found that after finishing battles in the regions of West Asia and the Middle East, he did not continue to Mesopotamia. Instead, he took a detour to conquer Egypt and then advanced strongly eastward. In light of this unusual move, some historians suggest that the fertile and wealthy land of Egypt attracted Alexander. Many scholars also believe that Alexander wanted to seize the elixir of immortality passed down through generations by the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and realize the concept of eternal life. The Egyptians truly believed that everyone could have a chance to live a second life. In their mythology, the god Osiris is the embodiment of victory over death and resurrection. He was killed by the god Seth, dismembered, and ultimately revived thanks to the supernatural magic of the goddess Isis and other gods. For the ancient Egyptians, death could not be subdued or conquered, but dying did not mean the end of life. Rather, it opened the door to another existence. To achieve this transformation from death to life, the ancient Egyptians made thorough preparations. In addition to the pyramids, temples of the gods, mummies, amulets, and familiar offerings, the Egyptian Book of the Dead is also an essential guide for ancient Egyptians on the path to resurrection. So, what strange things does this book contain that allows human life to return once again? Are there any conditions in this life that need to be met, or is the opportunity the same for everyone? We invite you to the next part right after this. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Holy Book of Ancient Egyptians. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, also known as the Holy Book of the Ancient Egyptians, is one of the most famous burial documents transmitted since ancient Egypt. It was often written on papyrus, placed in coffins, or between the wrappings of mummies. The Egyptian Book of the Dead has always been an important document for studying the history and civilization of ancient Egypt. Each passage begins and ends with a commentary, emphasizing the function of the sections and reminding the deceased of important matters to consider upon resurrection. The content of the book is primarily divided into four main parts. First, it helps the deceased gain the ability to function in the afterlife, particularly the ability to speak. Second, it describes the origins of the gods, their functions, and their scope of activity related to the afterlife. Third, it describes how the deceased, after reincarnation during the day, will sail with the sun across the sky, and at night will go to the underworld ruled by the god Osiris, enjoying offerings to gain the necessary energy for eternal life. Finally, it provides guidance for successfully passing the judgment of the afterlife to attain resurrection. It presents to the deceased the free life of those who have passed on in the underworld, the earthly realm, and paradise. If we say that the function of the pyramid texts is to assist the revered pharaohs in their resurrection within the pyramid, then the Egyptian Book of the Dead tends to be for more ordinary individuals, helping the deceased possess the book to navigate the judgment in the afterlife and come back to life. Ancient Egyptians believed that words and images had special functions, and once they combined, they would create mysterious magic. Therefore, the Egyptian Book of the Dead employed visual and written methods for transmission. Thanks to the easily understandable texts and illustrations, it provided the deceased with guidance related to the gods, defeating demons, poisonous insects, and reaching the other side of the world. So what were the conditions and processes for resurrection for the dead in ancient Egypt? How would they live in the afterlife? Conditions and process of resurrection of the dead in ancient Egypt. Before exploring the core secret of the resurrection of the ancient Egyptians, let us first understand the specific conditions and processes required for the dead to be resurrected. The ancient Egyptians believed that when God created humans, He reserved a place for them in the afterlife. However, whether one can truly be reborn or not, certain conditions must still be met. The two most important points are whether the deceased adhered to moral and social norms while alive, and whether they prepared for resurrection according to common religious beliefs. Additionally, the deceased needed to be embalmed after death to maintain a non-decaying body, an immortal soul known as Ka and Ba, everlasting reputation, and eternal likeness. Ka is believed to be independent of the earthly body, capable of moving and eating at will but restricted to the tomb, where the body or even the statue of the deceased is located. Ba is a part of the soul that begins its journey to follow the gods. Of course, embalming is just the first step in the resurrection process. The deceased must also undergo a long journey to the underworld. There are many checkpoints guarded by gods and demons. The deceased not only must choose the correct path, but also provide the appropriate signals or passwords to pass through. They must also face the judgment of God Osiris and 42 other gods. In it, the most thrilling and captivating part of the entire trial is the weighing of the heart of the deceased. On the left side of the scale lies the heart of the deceased, and on the other side is a feather symbolizing truth and order. If the deceased is innocent, the scale remains balanced, and the deceased will pass the judgment. If the scale becomes unbalanced, whether too light or too heavy, the heart will be devoured by the divine beast. The soul of the deceased will also completely vanish, and there will be no chance of reincarnation. Although enduring the judgment of the gods is a terrifying ordeal, once successfully passed, the deceased may have the opportunity to live again and attain eternal life in the afterlife like a god. Therefore, accepting the judgment is indeed worthwhile. The afterlife of ancient Egyptians. Although the primary purpose of the Egyptian Book of the Dead is to guide the deceased to the afterlife, it does not provide a detailed description of what the afterlife will be like or where it is located. However, through the book, we learn that the afterlife, according to the Egyptians, is essentially just a version of the current world. In their imagination, humans not only can resurrect from death, but can also live forever. After being resurrected, a person can regain their head and heart and restore various bodily functions, such as vision, speech, and the ability to eat. People can also work as they did in life, reunite with family in this world in the afterlife, and together enjoy family happiness. Indeed, the Egyptian Book of the Dead is immensely significant for us in understanding the ancient Egyptians' concept of the afterlife. On one hand, it requires individuals to strive and prepare both spiritually and materially while alive to have the capability of rebirth after death. On the other hand, it reflects the religious beliefs of ancient Egyptians and their imagination of the afterlife. The deceased will attain a second life after passing the judgment of the god and live a life similar to that of the current world. It can be seen that the ancient Egyptians were very brave in facing death and tried to conquer it. Even in the presence of the god of death, they were not afraid, serious and persistent, enjoying the moment. This is what is admirable about the ancient Egyptians. Please leave your comments below this video. Now, goodbye and see you all in the next videos. Wishing everyone a warm day with family.